Rosy Hardy. This is Rosy Hardy Gardening. We've got to the end of August, so that means it's Q&A time. Firstly, can I just say thank you very much for all of your positive comments, and we will carry on in the frame that we've been going for a long time. Let's start with the questions. This is from somebody who lives in Ireland, and they have bought hellebores earlier in the year for the first time. Was under the impression that they only ever bloomed in the winter into an early spring, but theirs have started to flower, and should they cut them back? And the answer is they can flower a little bit earlier. Their true season should be over the winter period through the early spring, but sometimes if we get cold nights and you get slightly duller days, they will start to put on the odd flower slightly early on. It's not a problem, there's nothing wrong with the plants. Let them flower, deadhead them. You don't need to do anything else. Enjoy them when they come into their full flowering season. This is from somebody in Amsterdam or just outside Amsterdam, and they've had a rhododendron for 2 years in a container, and they're wanting to move it from the container into the ground. When should they do that? Well, you can transplant it now. We're now in a good time. The soil is warm and it would work really well. Make sure that you create a hole that is a good size bigger than the plant that's in the container. Mix with it good garden compost. When you backfill the plant, make sure it's well filled up and water it in well into the ground. You could wait until the plant has its next flowering and then do it in the spring, but then you run the risk of not getting enough summer water. But in the first season of the plant going into the ground, make sure that it does not dry out. So you will have to give it some regular watering just to keep it on top of that, and then it will be perfectly happy. So this is one about box. Here in the UK we have an awful problem of a box tree caterpillar affecting all of the box, and a lot of box is just dying off from this. A lot of people don't want to use chemicals, and I fully understand that. So this person is saying they're going to use Taxus baccata to reproduce their evergreen ball and topiary. I'm wondering what to use for the low hedge, considering a Lonicera. I can give you various ones that you would do, but my question to you is, why don't you change and have a completely different thought? I've been to lots of gardens where they have had a lot of box hedging all the way around. They've removed it all, and it's given them the chance to rethink and redo their garden and not have that constriction of an actual hedge all the way around. Just one thought: go without a hedge. If you do want a hedge then, and you want an evergreen, you can look at the Lonicera nitida, the dwarf varieties. You can take cuttings from that and they don't need as much clipping. You could look at something like Teucrium lucidris, which would be a flowering hedge, or go for a herbaceous hedge such as Nepeta Summer Magic. Right, hi Rosie, please can you provide some ideas to design a flower bed which has flower interest from March to October and doesn't need over the top maintenance, both for south facing and north facing borders? I think personally there are 2 videos in that. This is far too big a subject just for me to answer in a Q&A. It always boils down to right plant, right place is your first thing, and then the other thing to do, find a good local nursery that grows their own stock, grows outdoors, visit it every 3 weeks and find out what they have that will grow in full sun, what will grow in full shade. That way you can build up the material for those borders. Otherwise, I will think of those as subjects for some more videos. This autumn, I'm going to attempt root propagation. The plant they're going to be using is Eryngium. Done some homework about it, but any advice from me would be appreciated. Eryngiums are a very good plant to start with. They're very easy to do from root cuttings. And do be aware, it always used to be said, and in a lot of the propagation books it will tell you, you need to orientate the root so that when you cut it from the plant, you keep the top of the root at the top and the bottom of the root at the bottom, and you put it in that way into cells or into trays with propagating mix in there. You don't need to do that. You can just lay them flat on the surface, which makes life a lot easier. Do go for slightly older roots, i.e. ones that are around about pencil thickness. These tend to be nearer the crown of the plant, but you can use slightly thinner if you need to. Always use a propagation mix. Cover the roots with about 1 centimetre of covering over the top, either the propagation mix or something else. Bark is fine. They need to then be kept frost free, and you can put them in the dark, it doesn't really matter. 2 centimetres is the minimum length, I would say, anything up to 5 centimetres. Hope that helps. Do enjoy growing, they are very good. You will not see new shoots coming until the spring. Lavender pruning isn't far off. How can you realistically cut them back? Some say not into old wood, others say you can go quite going, you can do it now. I'm confused. Right, if you look back in my old videos, you will see a video I have done of a lavender hedge showing you how far you can go back and what to do. But basically what you are looking for is you are looking to reduce the height. So if your lavender is say 45 centimeters high without the flower, you can go back at least half height, but I would go as low as you feel you can. Look at the wood at the base there and check that you've got new growing points. If you can see little bumps and little grey growing points, you can cut back to those, and you can do it now. If you go to any of the lavender fields, they use a machine and they whip it right down to ground level. Hope that helps you. This one is, I've rooted some cuttings of Nepeta and Perovskia, which is now Salvia, in water. They rooted really quickly, potted them up, and all they seem to be doing is wanting to go up into flower. This is quite normal with plants like that. Transfer from water to soil takes a bit of time because the roots that are produced in water are slightly finer than the roots that you would get if they produced them in a soil base. There's nothing wrong with it, but you have to transfer very carefully, and you just need to give them a bit of time. So they will need a little bit of basal heat, they need a good amount of light. You're doing the right thing of cutting off the flower, but don't do it all the time, because every time you cut off flower they put energy into producing more flower. So I would leave them flowering for a little bit of time and let that flower die off and then cut it off. And you need to really be keeping these plants in containers and keeping them frost free for the winter, somewhere where they are in good light but not bright light all the time, and then they should be perfectly fine to put out in the garden in the spring. Someone else here has got hostas, wants to know the best time to divide them, whether they should divide them now in the autumn or divide them in the spring. If you're not sure, then the best thing to do is divide them in the spring. The plants are growing and they will grow on for you perfectly well, because whenever you divide a plant you're going to cut a bit of root. If you do that in the dormant season, it just sits there. If you haven't done it before, go for spring. If you've divided other plants, then you're perfectly fine doing it now in the autumn. I hope you have success. Hi Rosy, advise if my plant has root rot. She's got a rose and it's flowering really well. Now the buds are all going yellow and falling off. To me that sounds like stress. Whenever you get leaf yellowing or buds going yellow, it sounds like the plant is under stress. It could be overwatering. So therefore stop watering, give the plant a little bit of a prune back. If it's too dry, you'll also get the same. So just check the soil around. If it's in a container, that's quite easy. You can just stick your finger in, have a look and see if the pot is really very wet. If it is, stop watering, give it a little prune back so that you haven't got any of those dead buds there. If it's in the ground, again, just have a little scrattle around in the soil and see if it's overwatered or dry. And same thing, if it's in the soil it's a bit difficult, you can't stop the rain, but if it's dry you can give it some more moisture. But again, a little bit of a light prune will help. I've got someone here who's got 3 to 5 year old butterfly bushes which are dying. They seem to be fine one day and then they all curl up, the whole bush. Lost 5 of them. One of them looking completely dead started to grow from the base, and then now the same thing is happening to a forsythia. They're nowhere near. Lives in York County, South Carolina. Now, to me, instantly, if you're saying that they haven't got dry, then that's fine. It sounds more like a fungal or bacterial infection has got into the plant material, especially as it's now starting on another species. I would give the plants a good prune. I would give them a little bit of water and food to see if that helps, and if it doesn't, then try growing a brand new plant in a container with bought-in potting medium in there, and see if that works. If they grow perfectly well in a container, there is a problem with your soil, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you may have, but you could get your soil tested, I am sure. Okay, last one here. Somebody has got a honeysuckle climber. For the last 7 years it has flowered, and then over the last 2 years it's barely put on any flower at all. It's looking absolutely fine. It's in sun for the most day, shade in the early morning, but no flower. What should they do? I would say you need to prune it. Pruning usually gives the plants a stimulus, makes them put on side growth as well, and it's from that side new growth that you will get a good amount of flower. And then on top of that, I would give it just a little bit of sulfate of potash to help and encourage flowering. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel.